We're going to do a little history lesson to try and break down the question we briefly asked in the last video, is what actually is React? I'm going to keep this much shorter than I wish it could be. If this piques your interest in just kind of the history of JavaScript and the web, in my ES6 course, the very first full video is a much bigger version of this topic. It is free. You're welcome to go over there and you can watch it and come back. We're going to start in the year 1995. And this was an awesome year. In addition to GoldenEye and The Usual Suspects coming out, if you are at all interested in web development, and you should be because you're here, this was an absolute monster year. In 1995, Java was born, PHP was born, Ruby was born, Apache was born, and then I'm going to put here a little bit prematurely, JavaScript was born. And this is very important because of the way that JavaScript has actually started, so we can lay a little bit of groundwork. A company that same year called Netscape was founded, and you know Netscape as Mozilla, and they had a browser called Navigator, and you know that as Firefox. The companies went through a transition a long time ago, and it's not exactly the same, but pretty much. Well, Netscape in 1995 is totally committed to the web. They have the only real browser at this point. They know that Microsoft is coming, so the CEO, Mark Andreessen, hires Brendan Eich to build a scripting language. And that scripting language is not supposed to compete with these. And I'm going to put on here Python. Python came out in 91, so let's kind of have an add-on there. It is not supposed to compete with those because those are already handling all the back-end stuff. We want a scripting language that's accessible to amateurs and hobbyists and people who just want to dabble in basic programming. Why? Why not just make it a full language with inheritance and try and go after them? Well, there are many reasons, but for one thing, the web is all of 23,000 sites. Now, I don't know if that sounds like a lot, but it's not. There are now several billion sites. So this is the web in its absolute infancy. You're not going to be able to go out and fetch these people to move over to something that's so tiny. You're not going to be able to get those people to move to a place where really nothing is happening because the web pages are totally inert. Think Wikipedia. You open up a page on Wikipedia, and that's it. There's no more JavaScript that needs to happen. In 1999, the big JavaScript project I got that year for the department I worked for, I made a JavaScript drop-down menu. So it was a really big deal in 1999, but it took like 50 or 60 lines of JavaScript. We can do that in a matter of a few lines of CSS now. So JavaScript came into the world to be the easy programming language, while these guys remained the heavy programming languages. We skip forward to, I'm going to go up to 2005, and I'll put a circa in front of that. jQuery is actually released in 06. Ajax comes out. iOS and Android come out. And we hit 100 million websites. So in just 10 years, we went from 23,000 to 100 million websites. People are now carrying around full computers in their pocket that are capable of running JavaScript. Ajax has completely revolutionized the web because internet connections are faster, and so you're able to send lots of little pieces of data. And I don't know what you've heard about jQuery, but let me tell you, as somebody who lived through this, jQuery was awesome. It was so painful developing web pages across all the different browsers, even the different versions of browsers, to eventually where jQuery kind of unified the DOM. It was like a language across all of the different stuff that used the DOM. So jQuery was awesome because it took us from web pages that had, these hundreds of lines in order to make just a little nav bar to just a few lines. So jQuery was awesome. But the web is very much growing up. So we hop forward a little bit further to 2010. Again, I'll put circa. The V8 engine has come out. Node has come out. And Angular is born. And I'm going to put next to it Backbone if you're a Backbone person. Angular was probably the bigger issue here because Google was behind it. But this is when things really start to change for JavaScript, because at this point in history, Netflix, Instagram, and Twitch are also founded about this time. So browsers have gone from needing to serve up a tiny number of pages in 1995. And who went to those pages anyway? Not very many people had computers. The people who had computers didn't have modems, and the people who had modems probably didn't have browsers. So nobody was going to those pages, to now where you have major websites like Netflix, Walmart, and AOL and Amazon and all of the big banking websites and companies like Disney, and there are other retailers like Home Depot and Lowe's are popping up. Newspapers are starting to publish their stuff. So you have the New York Times and the Washington Post, the BBC. All of these websites have gone from being little, fun marketing sites around 2000 to being a really important big part of the company. They're not just little applications. They're major software as a service, or they're a major platform in order to actually make money. Angular then is the first UI framework, and a UI framework is something that seeks to do this. JavaScript was like this in the old days, where we had tons and tons and tons of lines, and then jQuery made it like this. Well, this was pre 2000, and we'll say 10. Again, the dates are extremely relative or subjective here, but post 2010, the jQuery files have now become this. So now the jQuery files are totally out of control. Well, Angular tries to bring it back down to this, or at most this. And I'm talking about Angular 1 here. I'm not talking about Angular 2 through 7 or 8 or 15 or whatever's been released as of you're watching this video. Native JavaScript get improved by jQuery, and then we had jQuery getting improved by Angular, where these huge websites need to be managed somehow. Well, in 2013 enters React, and React is a vast improvement. I would think almost everyone would say over Angular 1. It is also a UI framework, and a UI framework is a whole bunch of JavaScript that somebody else has written to try and make your life easier. In what way does it make life easier? React seeks to answer this question as a framework. Again, a whole bunch of files that you can use. How can we modernize web development? Okay, because we can't have this anymore. We can't have a file that's this long, and if you're Facebook, you've got a bunch of these really ridiculous monolithic files. Okay, it answers these, first of all, by modularizing stuff. Okay, and what that means is it breaks up the application into a bunch of tiny little pieces. So once again, the goal is to get back to files that are nice and short and very manageable. This is also good because it allows them to be encapsulated. That means that we can follow some basic object-oriented principles, make them reusable, make them easy to pass around because they manage their own data. All of their methods are internal and affect their own data. We'll talk about the component system or the modular system in a lot more depth. 2, it manages state effectively. This is something that Angular did not really do. We'll talk about state a lot, but you have web pages that are changing constantly now in a big way, and somebody needs to be in charge of all of it, and it's not a good approach to let the DOM just be the source of truth anymore. It's efficient. It's efficient because if you just think about Facebook, of the tons of changes that are happening every second, you're getting messages, you're getting status updates from friends, you're getting messages from other people, you're getting notification ticks, you're getting friend ads. All of those things are tiny little DOM manipulations, and jQuery was very, very expensive in how it manipulated the DOM. React can do this in a very, very efficient way. It completely separates front end and back end, and there's a number of positive benefits about this, but just to name a few, you can have two completely separate teams. You can have front-end people and you can have back-end people. The front end can focus entirely on React. In the past, if you had these two together, which is how it worked for years, if one of them went down, the other went down. If you wanted to change one, you had to change the other. If you wanted to update one, you had to update the other. Well, now separating them out, again, is to modularize them, and it makes it so much easier to manage, to maintain. You can run it across multiple years, multiple dev teams, and it's so much easier to separate them out. It also seeks to take advantage of the hardware increases. So things like your phone, it might have a stronger processor than what is on your AWS T2 Micro. The hardware is just there now to where we want to offload as much as possible to the browser, because the hardware that the user is running their browser on is outstanding, and for large scale websites can save so much processing power. It takes us from being imperative to declarative. That means we can get away from telling the computer exactly how to do something to simply say, this is what I want you to do. Okay, so the super short version. What is React? React is a whole bunch of JavaScript that somebody else wrote, mostly Facebook, that helps your development go from being unsophisticated, boring, slow, and tiny to being big. That's what it does. It takes us from over here to over here. If you have a tiny website or a tiny project, React is not what you need. React is made to build buildings and cities. It's not made to build log cabins or tents. That's what the web was in the beginning. The web grew up. The web is no longer boring. It's no longer unsophisticated programmers. It's now professional programmers. It's now large teams. It's now huge companies like Amazon or Facebook. And it allows you to make your UI, meaning your front end or the stuff inside the browser, really well. So let's get started and get you on the slope to writing better front end code.